Yeah. And he saved him the last time, huh? That was his role, was to...
Yeah. He was actually the president for 4 years.
Yeah.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's only Freedom Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. My co-host, Leland Faegre.
293 days until the general election.
Okay. Yeah.
That's getting close.
It's getting close,
Yeah.
yes. And if the
Is there anything
Nevada
more exciting?
caucuses are next month for the Dems, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're coming up, and so that's another opportunity for us to bring in some legislators to our format, huh?
Yes. I think that would be a good idea. Yeah. The Dems, the donkey parade was on TV again last night.
It was?
Yes.
I slept through it.
Yeah, I know. I was fascinated by the opening part of it because, it was finally about foreign policy. The only problem is Tulsi Gabbard wasn't there.
Yeah, the only one that had anything to say about it wasn't up there.
Nah, no.
Oh, God. It's just...
And, diversity is their strength, and Tulsi is part South Pacific Islander, but she didn't make it, but she did raise a respectable $3.5 million, so she's still in the fight, and her campaign says she has opened an office in New Hampshire, and it's packed with volunteers, according to the campaign.
Well, I can see them being quite enthusiastic about her.
Yes.
If I were a Democrat.
Yes,
you know.
And especially in New Hampshire, which is an open primary, Republicans and Libertarians can vote for her. It don't have to be a registered Democrat. Well, the ones that were left on there were just pretty putrid on foreign policy. Speaking of putrid, as I like to call him, there's facts coming in about his campaign and how he's such a neoliberal stooge that it's not well known, but he is a former associate of a think tank called the Truman Organization, which is run by, guess who? Madeleine Albright.
I'm not sure that really should surprise if they think about it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, look at his positions on the issues.
Right.
Look at his history. I just think that's kind of a yawn, but I guess because people don't dig too deeply,
right.
Comes as a surprise.
Yeah, sure. And his best friend is on the National Interagency Development, one of those four-letter gobbledygook agencies that's responsible for transitioning governments in foreign countries.
I'm sorry, did you say transitioning?
That's what it said, transitioning. So maybe they're offering free sex changes? I don't know.
Well, Pete ought to know.
Yeah. And his campaign is riddled with spooks. So he's definitely in the Overton window. And the others, Bernie could possibly be sincere about wanting truce, but they're all going to be Zionists first. And Biden, he's supposed to be presidential because he said that he would leave troops in the Middle East. Not as many as Trump, of course, but he'd continue patrolling the Persian Gulf, or maybe it's the Arabian Gulf. I don't know which one they're calling it this week.
Long live globalism.
Yeah. And he would keep that, and he would keep special forces to fight ISIS. Boy, don't these people know that we created ISIS?
Yeah. Well, they do know.
Yeah, but they won't admit it.
No,
right?
they won't concede that.
Yeah. And actually, it's like World War II. The Russians actually defeated the Germans, but we never include them in our D-Day celebrations or any other World War II celebration. And the Democrats are so anti-Putin that it
Remember
really...
the good old days when they loved the Rosenbergs?
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't get close enough to the Russians in those days.
No, they could not.
I kind of have a thing for that period, I wish we could get back to
there. Bring back
the
McCarthy.
nostalgia of the Cold War.
Yeah. Well, this is Cold War II, but it's not as black, it's not as black
nearly
and
as
white.
much fun.
Yeah, the goalposts keep changing around. So, the Syrian Arab Army, Iran, Hezbollah, the Shia militias, and Russia did a lot more to defeat ISIS than the U.S. did. In fact, for periods of months on end, the U.S. was basically cohabitating. Supporting them and cohabitating with them.
Creating and supporting them so that everybody else could get rid of them. That was the most strangest period of our American history, I think.
Yes, this whole thing?
This whole 10 years.
Yeah. Well, ever since 1989,
well,
at least.
Ever since we decided to go into Iraq.
Yeah.
That's basically when it all turned.
2003, yeah, that's right. And so anyway, Biden voted for the war, but, he was lied to, and he admits, I didn't realize, so he has no antennas. That's the thing about Biden. He doesn't know what's going on.
Well, I think he thinks he knows what's going on.
Oh, that's what makes him even more dangerous.
Yeah,
yes.
and funny. Because he claims he was supportive of the decision to go after Osama bin Laden, and yet the record shows that he didn't, in fact, support that decision.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that?
No, I mean, going to Afghanistan, he didn't support that?
Yeah, Ducey went up to him in Iowa somewhere, and he suggested to Ducey that he didn't say that. It's on tape. It says everything his whole political career is
on tape
for everybody to see. It's very funny.
Yeah, and so it was pretty much a dull affair. As Leland, you didn't even watch it. I watched parts of it. I worked, but I DVR'd it, but the biggest kerfuffle is that the Twitterverse is talking about is how Elizabeth Warren snubbed Bernie. And, that was a handshake after the debate. She did not shake his hand, and the Bernie bros are all upset about that.
Yeah, I don't know what the truth is there, but what they didn't cover was O'Keefe's discovery that Bernie Sanders' operatives are all Stalinists.
Yeah. They want to put us in re-education camps.
Wolf Blitzer wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No. It was all softball questions.
Oh, my God. It's
Except
worthless.
some of them to Bernie were harder. I think they were targeting Bernie because he's surging, and they wanted to see if they could take him out a little bit. But, yeah, so Bernie's campaign manager said the Gulag wasn't so bad. They had a living wage.
Yeah.
Tell that to Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, for how many years did they have a living wage? Yeah, tell that to Solzhenitsyn. Perfect.
At a Proper Fit Footwear in the Reno Town Mall, we've been accomplishing happy feet.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now back to the show.
Meet again. Don't know where. Don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. This is Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio, and you just heard Vera Lynn with her classic song, We'll Meet Again.
Is that what that was?
Yes.
You really sneaked that one in on me.
Because Secretary of State Pompeo admitted that, just like we said last week on Talking Truth to Power, that the U.S. was using the Pharisaical expanded definition of imminent. And, we're not using the Merriam-Webster's definition of imminent, like Iran posed an imminent threat to our air bases. We're using the Daniel Benjamin expanded definition of imminent that...
which has an exigent durational context to it.
Yes, it does. Uh-huh. It doesn't mean anytime soon. It doesn't mean maybe ever.
Not ever?
Not ever.
Oh, man.
It could be never. You don't know.
So it's almost an antonym then.
Yes. And the the fact is there is no threat from Iran. Jim Webb, the former Secretary of the Navy in Reagan's cabinet.
Oh yeah, has he been speaking up?
He did. He wrote a column, an op-ed column. I think it was in the Times.
Trump considered him for Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, he did shortly, and he said that I wish he had picked him because he's definitely a non-interventionist, and he said you just don't go around killing a general in another country. But if that in a country that we're not at war with either,
and in a country where we're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of reasons. But the reality is that I think Webb was pretty much an insider. I think he was pretty much a deep state insider that masqueraded as an independent.
All right, so you think he was inside the Overton window as well? Yeah? Well, possibly.
You wouldn't be hearing from him if he wasn't, I think.
Well, possibly. But anyway, he does have I like the fact that he writes about the Scotch-Irish and the rednecks and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he's as bad as the majority of them. No,
right.
By any means.
All right. So, in other words, we'd had no idea when Iran was going to... Yeah, and then the Donald gave that interview with Laura Ingraham, who has kind of disgraced herself. I'm not a neocon, but... unlike Tucker Carlson, who's held the line, and he's about the only one that's really held the line.
Well, she's only come around because of Trump.
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to the show before Trump was on the land?
The radio show, I think I did. Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
She was all for Bush and all for McCain, and that's what she was until Trump entered the stage.
Right.
So she's a different media mogul now than she used to be, and that's why she's tolerable.
Right. Yeah. And but at any rate, she interviewed Donald, and Donald said there were 4 embassies. I think there were 4 embassies that they were going to, you know those Pinocchio Geico commercials where Pinocchio's nose keeps growing and growing?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
No, they've been so everywhere for the last week now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Geico has an actor dressed up like a wooden Pinocchio, and he's caught in different situations, and every time he lies, his nose just grows. I wish politicians could be afflicted with that condition, I mean, that would be fun. At least we would see them in real time. Instead of waiting for some liberal newspaper to give them 3 or 4 Pinocchios, we could actually see the Pinocchio action.
Well, if we are educated properly, we wouldn't need that as a stunt for understanding, because we'd know right off the page whether there was any legitimate.
But that's the thing. Most voters are underinformed voters, and you can't blame them because they've made government so big and so complicated. You can't keep up with all
then
the
what's our
information.
How do we do it?
I spend quite a bit of time in alternative media. And
why don't they? This is the psychological characteristic that is missing in the discussion, because much of what we're seeing in the discourse on civilization that we're watching now has as much to do with our education, collectively and individually, that needs to be explained to people. That's what we're trying to do here on Talking Truth to Power.
But you can't explain certain things, as we have said several times. The indication that there's Jewish power is that you can't talk about Jewish power.
Wait just a minute, when we get security, come in here real quick.
And the indication that anything that's outside the mainstream is automatically a conspiracy theory, even though it's a conspiracy fact in many cases.
And I don't appreciate that Hannity does that. He always refers to Rachel Maddow, who does deploy conspiracy all the time, and it's just nonsensical stuff.
Right.
It gives a bad reputation to those of us who do interpret conspiracy properly.
Yes.
And and so people don't really know which is which.
Right.
That's the
and then if you do come out with the truth, chances are you're going to be canceled or deplatformed or whatever it is that they're doing to people.
Or inside the Overton window.
Yeah. And you have to go inside and the Overton window in order to maintain a living as a pundit or a commentator or whatever. There's very few. Now, Tucker, of course, has Colonel McGregor on quite frequently.
He's very good.
Yes, and he's such a realist, and he toes the line.
Mm-hmm.
And the mornings on Fox, they have one or two non-interventionists that occasionally pop up, but you have all these pundits that they like. Colonel or General Jack Keane, whatever he is,
Yeah.
that never disclose their ties to the military-industrial complex.
Nor the Council on Foreign Relations.
No, that's right, exactly.
And now, I looked recently, and I think we talked about this on a previous show, but he's not listed as a member of the CFR any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, like so many, Gingrich and others, you can't find their names on that list anymore. So I'm quite optimistic about the trend.
Okay.
Notwithstanding any hiccup along the way or event along the way, the trend is clearly there. I was very, very Did you see the China signing this morning?
I
The
did.
China trade deal.
Yeah, I saw.
What was the most upsetting part of that to you?
Well, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched Nancy Pelosi get up and blame Putin again before she named the masters that are going to take the Democrats in.
Yeah, I saw that too. But the most disturbing part, the only disturbing part of the ceremony, and it was ceremonial, lots of pomp, circumstance, was that none other than Heinz Alfred Kissinger is sitting in the front row.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
my God.
Yeah.
I had,
the British Knight, Sir Henry Kissinger.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
But it's obligatory. These guys are around. You remember when McCain's running mate, the former governor of Alaska, I can't think of her name.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah
Palin.
Palin. Remember she went running into his office, when she became his running mate. Because, she had to kiss Kissinger's ring, to become the nominee.
Oh, right. Or Brzezinski when he was alive, and so on. Yeah. Speaking of Brzezinski, his daughter's boyfriend got on a pretty good rant about the Democrats in the debate last night.
You mean husband? They're married.
Yeah, their husband, yeah.
Joe?
Morning Joe, yeah. He was frank. He said none of those people on the debate could beat Trump. None of them.
And so did the guy on CNN that we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, Van Jones?
Yeah. So, it's clear. Everybody can see that there's really nobody of significant stature to go up against Trump.
Right. Certainly not Biden. He's going to eat them alive, I think, unless something happens, unless he actually does go to war with Iran, and that turns into a big deal instead of, what Iran did in retaliation for what we did was really surgically precise. I mean, some of them missed entirely, but those missiles. But if they were liquid-fueled old Scud missiles, they must have upgraded the GPS on them because they hit what they had to hit without inflicting any damage.
They weren't
any lives.
Saddam Hussein's Scuds, were they?
No.
Remember that period?
Right.
Where they never knew where those things were coming.
Or even a couple of years ago when the Houthis were firing Scuds at Saudi Arabia and they missed the airport entirely, landed in a field hundreds of yards away, and then until they got those drones. Oh, they didn't do it. Iran did it. We should. I'm going to slap myself. We know Iran did it.
With one of those countries.
Yeah. Well,
they got 80 million people in Iran.
Right.
And if you go to next door, you've got how many in Iraq?
Considerably less. I think it's 40, maybe.
Okay, and then 25% of the population is Shia. Right?
Yes.
The rest.
No, I think
it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
Sunnis.
The Sunnis were always the minority.
Right.
That's why Saddam Hussein had to kick butt all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Sunnis were always the minority, and.
But it's a prize.
Yes.
It's a prize for Iran, and the stealth nature of their role in the acquisition of control of the country is the interesting part here, and that's what got the neocons all up in a tizzy.
Yeah, but all of that Iranian influence is also largely overblown, and it makes strategic sense that they would want to have buffers between them and Israel and Saudi Arabia, that they want to have friendly states on their borders, for once.
Every part of this is the result of Bush's decision to go in.
Exactly.
Without it?
And Biden voted for it.
Yeah.
Destination Midtown. Experience the difference. Reno's premier shopping extravaganza.
Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 4.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and right alongside me is the still chuckling Leland Faegre.
I can't get over it. 293 days. Oh, that's right. We talked about
yeah. Now, we are getting back a little bit more to Iran, if we can. We note that our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo,
You're adding an L in that word,
I think
aren't
so.
you?
Yeah.
I caught that.
He said that Iran needs to start acting like a normal nation. And he said maybe Iran should be like Norway, which is a nation of 5 million people. It's cold, very cold. It's
so they don't have time to go out and make mischief.
No,
they have to be inside.
Yes, yeah, they have to be inside most of the time, probably drinking quite a bit. But
I don't think they do much drinking in Iran, do they?
The great Caitlin Johnson, she's a well-known columnist for those who are, don't stay with the Washington Post and the New York Times. She asked what it would be like for Iran to become a normal nation. So who is the normal nation? Well, America must be the normal nation if he wants Iran to be like America. So in order to become like a normal nation, Iran will need to circle the planet with hundreds of Iranian military bases.
That's right.
In order to become a normal nation, Iran will need to obtain thousands of nuclear weapons and actually use a couple of them. In order to become a normal nation, Iran will need to become the most dominant military, economic, and cultural force in the world, and then use that dominance to destroy any government, political party, ideology, faction, movement, or person who stands in its way. And they will have to need to arm violent extremist factions. This one I liked here. She has quite a few of them. In order to become a normal nation, Iran will need to begin meddling in scores of democratic elections around the world, and then start crying for years at the possibility of any nation returning the favor.
Doing it to us. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So she was right on. She was right on target, and we have seen a lot about the demonstrations in Iran, and there's a lot of still controversy over exactly what happened, and we pounced on them for hiding what happened. I don't think they knew what happened. And then they interviewed people, and then, of course, there was pressure from the other governments, like Canada was exerting pressure. Boy, my knees tremble when I think of Canada exerting pressure on anybody.
Yeah, that was an extraordinary loss for the Canadians. What was there, 60 citizens on that plane? Yeah. I don't know how you can explain a jet going off with missiles going off at the same time.
I know. How did that ever get off? And then it veered too close to the, to one of the missile sites. And from what I understand, these were the site that shot him down was not a permanent site. It was like created ad hoc due to the heightened tensions.
Mobile,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
And probably only had radio communications, which they were ineffective, and they shot it down. Now, some of the other conspiracy theorists, I hate to use that word, were saying we don't know, we don't know who the operators were yet. I mean, Iran has announced that they've arrested some of them, but it's still within the realm of possibility that they were not exactly Iranian, that they were some kind of MEK or who is, all over the place there, or some other Saudi-paid asset or something. So we'll wait and see. I'm not saying that's true. It could be just a conspiracy theory, but at any rate, Iran did come clean after a few days and admitted that they did it and said that they were very, very sorry and they were going to pay compensation. And then these were a lot of students that were killed, and Iranian students went out and started demonstrating against the regime. And we heard that they were saying, down with the clerics, and things like that. And that's very possible, for Iranian students, because there's a lot of...
Sure, they're out in the world, they're traveling, they have more of a secular orientation to civilization, and so this is a reasonable assumption that they were...
Yeah, but it's not a reasonable assumption to assume that they were large crowds, like certainly nothing like the funeral of Soleimani or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know about the numbers. In fact, I questioned, even what I was seeing visually, it didn't look like the numbers they were throwing out.
Right. When the camera pulled back, you saw that the crowd seemed to be quite a lot smaller than when you saw the close-ups.
But what I did take notice of is that they were occurring in many cities, not large demonstrations, which you might be surprised at because of the nature of the government there.
Right.
But in many cities, there were significant crowds assembling, and that's unique in and of itself.
Well, yeah, and if the Ayatollah is not long for this world, Khomeini, and there's been some speculation that if conditions were right, they might not have a cleric as the head of the government, but they're going to have elections pretty soon there, and I'm betting that Rouhani will be removed from office, and there'll be more hardliners in office in Iran due to the, the constant tensions that we have.
Yeah, well, these are anybody's guess, I think, at this point. But you would think that there could be an Ahmadinejad in the scene, among those that would announce. But it will be interesting to observe, and coming into our election season as well.
So, and then there's Iraq. 17 years after we invaded Iraq, I think it was 17, we have suddenly made Iraq an enemy again.
Yeah.
What goes around comes around, huh? And the interim president had some very bad things to say about our president, which, are not going to be repeated on Fox News. That he said that he wanted help to rebuild the infrastructure after the United States, did so much to damage it. And President Trump said, only if you give us 50% of your oil revenues.
Well, that's an interesting statement, because we never got any of the oil from all of our effort there, whatever that effort was to accomplish, because China and Russia absorbed that oil.
Yeah. And so that's, in fact, the president, he went and cut a deal with China, and he said that Trump was even more furious and threatened sanctions and all this stuff. So, it's not a good scene, and threatening to destroy their cultural sites is not a good scene. But those are just the tips of the iceberg. I mean,
to me, it looks like rope-a-dope from a distance. But we'll see. I think, again, did I mention that it was George Bush that got us into that mess in the first place? I mean,
and
honestly,
Joe Biden voted for it?
It was the worst decision in the nation's history.
Right.
There is no question about it. Of all of this stupid stuff we've done over the last, 60 years since the inception of the Central Intelligence Agency, that was clearly the dumbest ever.
Right. And speaking of CIA, it was also revealed that they had targeted Soleimani for months, and Bloody Gina was present when they decided to target him. Mm-hmm. And they tried to take out an Iranian general in Yemen and failed. That was also in the news.
That's right. Concurrently.
Yes. Very soon.
Within minutes or hours.
Hours, yeah. And so, it's just craziness that we have, a Democratic Party that's completely delusional about Russia, and then we have a Republican Party that's completely delusional about Iran.
Well, I think they're missing the boat, because if they were to be considered to be a legitimate opposition party, they should be taking that stance, that position on foreign policy, and then they draw people in.
Right.
I mean, look how attractive Tulsi is.
Right.
With the same positions.
Well, she's very attractive to a lot of people, but not necessarily to a lot of Democrats. I mean, when she voted present for the impeachment, the Twitterverse was, mostly against her. There were quite a few people that agreed with her, but still, it was.
So you're saying there's no chance that the party could ever adopt an internationalist position and attract peel off voters from the middle or from our side? you're saying that couldn't happen.
I don't see it. I mean, the Democrats are becoming, except for Bernie. Bernie's trying to move away from, and Tulsi, trying to move away from identity politics and get back to the bread and butter socialist program of, working class. But most of the party is not there. Most of the party, like Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg, they're, whether they are trying to or not, they're appealing to the upper middle class white liberal segment, and they're interested in diversity. Diversity is our strength.
But what if they're just eviscerated in a Mondale or Jimmy Carter style election come 293 days from now? Would that force them to reevaluate their platform?
Well, it could. I mean, but I don't know if it would be in a good direction. I mean, that's what happened to McGovern.
No, I'm just saying on foreign policy.
Yeah, that's what happened to McGovern, and we got neoliberalism instead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which way they would go now. They've been trying neoliberalism ever since, Clinton for sure, and I don't know if they can step down from that. They're so ensconced in the CIA and the rest of the Blue Empire.
The big part of this entire discussion has to do with the education of their constituencies.
Right.
And I don't know whether they can pass that off on them anymore. They've dug such a deep trench, of socialism that I don't know if they can dig their way out of that.
Yes. Well, I know. Before we go into the next break, I mean, when they start talking about economics, they're just totally out to lunch, and that's what killed Jeremy Corbyn in England.
Sure did. Well, I think they're going to do it to themselves here.
Yeah.
293 days from now.
Howdy, Shannon Lawson here. When my family wants real barbecue, it's chili, rib tips, and sweet potato fries. It's the Butcher's Kitchen Barbecue, 7689.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. And we do try to talk here in a way that is First Amendment compatible. And we believe in the First Amendment and freedom of speech. That's why we touch on issues that you're not going to hear on Fox News or CNN or even the other radio channel in Reno.
That's why we have security here.
Yes, all the time.
Studios.
But did you notice that the impeachment managers, that how diverse they were?
I did notice that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I counted 2 blacks, 2 women, 1 Hispanic, and of course the Schiffenadler, 2 Jews.
The obligatory Jews.
Yes. And if diversity is really their strength, I think they're going to steamroll the Republicans.
Yeah, that's right.
And, the Oscars were on last night, and, once again, there weren't enough plaques for blacks given out. They're still complaining about the low representation of qualified minorities, and you can't count Antonio Banderas. He's not Hispanic. He's Spanish.
Oh.
He's a white Spaniard, yes. So you can't count him.
They're going to have to work on that.
Yes. And so, I wanted to complain a little bit about this, one of the nominees for Best Picture, Little Women. It's setting all kinds of box office records, but we really have to examine this.
It doesn't disparage Little Women, though, does it?
No. Well, how do we know they're even women? I mean, some of them may be transitioning, female to male or male to female, or some of them may be non-binary. I mean, do any of them identify as they or we or it or anything like that?
You raise a
Z?
good point.
Yeah. And then, I mean, they're little, but, you know.
How little are they? Are they little enough?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're they kind of discriminate verbally against sizeism, against height-challenged females due to congenital dwarfism.
They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yes. And they're all white. Everybody knows humanity began in Africa. Surely we should acknowledge that. I mean, why are there no women or non-women or women identifying as males of color in the film?
Uh-huh.
So I think Little Woman is highly offensive, and it doesn't recognize all 9 sexes. It's racist and disparages women of diminutive stature due to dwarfism. Cancel it.
Oh, I think you're onto something.
Yes.
Let's boycott that.
Yeah. Now, BTW, divest yourself from the Little Women.
That's right.
Yes, I know. So, I know, while they're talking about all of this nonsense going on and being politically correct in the Democratic Party, we did have something serious that's going on in Virginia. Did you notice
we did?
that? We do.
Okay.
We do have something.
Okay.
Not did, but do. And that is next Monday, January 20th, is the day when the legislature is expected to pass their anti-gun legislation.
Mm-hmm. So none of the legislators that as I understood the story I read, are going to be permitted to carry into their legislative chambers any longer. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
That's only one of the restrictions, yes.
Yeah, right. But I mean, that would be a significant... First of all, I didn't know that legislators were allowed to carry in Virginia. So that,
I didn't either, no.
And that's an enlightened protocol for...
Well, that reflects the old Dominion.
Yeah, sure it does.
We no longer have the old Dominion.
Not there.
No. Now we have, Virginia is dominated, at least in the legislature, by the Northern Virginia, which is full of,
D.C.
D.C. Bureaucrats.
Deep state
that
people.
Commute every day to Washington, D.C. to work.
Who describe death after birth as abortions.
Right.
Who'd have thought you'd ever get to that?
I know. Well, we have to keep the baby comfortable.
That's right.
Well,
I didn't know that, but the governor said so, and
yes.
so whatever he says. Huh?
Yes, I know.
You know that black-faced governor?
Yes. Yeah. And the lieutenant governor was accused of rape. Whatever happened to that story?
Yeah, that died too, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It died an unseemly death.
There's a phalanx of those people there. No wonder they're getting rid of the guns. Just wait till somebody comes into the legislative chambers with a gun. Let's see how they react at that point.
So the Oath Keepers, you know who they are, right?
Yep.
Yes. They are going to go to Virginia next week, and they're going to do some serious organizing. Quite a few of them are based in Las Vegas, and I know there's some up here in northern Nevada. If there are any Oath Keepers in the audience, you're certainly welcome to call in, and if not today, then next week, and
that's right.
Let us know what happens. But they have a very serious call to, not to arms, but to organization. They are specifically asking for ex-military or ex-law enforcement officers who can organize and facilitate the preparations that are going to be needed, which is command and control posts and security and all of that. They're specifically saying do not bring long guns, do not open carry, but concealed carry is okay. So they hope to be able to recognize or organize all of the rural counties to do what a couple of them have done so far, like deputize all their citizens or form a militia.
Gotta love that.
Yes.
I had it with your comments. I was able to look it up, and I see Wikipedia describes them as an anti-government American far-right organization associated with the militia movement.
Well, they're very right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right in what they say.
No, but they don't state it in that context.
No.
They're stating it in a very disparaging way.
They've been slurring them for a long time, and I don't think they've ever been associated with any violence.
No,
they're all nonviolent, and they're all there as observers and trying to keep the peace and trying to make sure that the Second Amendment and other rights are upheld.
But I just knew it was going to be described something like that when I looked it up just now.
Well, you know who edits WikiLeaks. I mean, that's another deep state cover operation. And, you know, the Mossad and there are organized Zionist groups, is my understanding, that are continually editing WikiLeaks, not just, you know, individual people, but organized groups to put Israel in the best light and so on. And you know, it's no longer an unbiased area, although I still refer to it sometimes,
Yeah.
sure.
It's a propaganda mechanism.
Yes, it is.
It has to be understood that way. I mean, no matter where you go, that has to be part of your evaluation.
Right.
How could you possibly not include that as characteristically
Sure.
part of the overall discovery?
It's like you understand that most fact checkers like Snopes are really liberals.
Right,
and,
exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, you take everything with a grain of salt. Can't trust anybody these days. Least of all your government. So, what you were going to talk a little bit more about the impeachment, Leland?
Oh, well, I was just looking at scenarios that are related to the impeachment imbroglio that we're watching, and I'm just considering possible scenarios. And I think that it could be that we'll have a whole set of new parts to this story by the time we reach, you know, Super Tuesday or beyond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in which case do they throw Biden to the wolves? If we get into the impeachment phase of the witness trial,
right,
and then we start actually hearing from people like Biden, that could change everything.
Right.
So then who's next in line? Who's the moderate that they go to then? Or do they just stay with Bernie? Do they just throw him to the wolves? Because he can't win.
Right.
He can't beat Trump. And then the most interesting scenario is, after Bloomberg,
yes,
Hillary.
Oh, God.
See?
Oh, gosh.
Because she's already proven that she can take votes in numbers that even Trump couldn't get on the popular vote.
As she's always fond of reminding us.
Oh, yeah. She won't let us forget.
But, you know, there is a certain chance. I heard some pundits say almost a 20% chance of a brokered convention with the Democrats.
I don't think there's any way out of a brokered convention. I just don't see it. There can't be enough votes. I mean, the caucuses are going to be interesting in 3 weeks, I think, because it will begin to shape that side of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have a better feel and look at what they're having to accomplish, because they don't have good options.
Right.
That party does not have good options. Even Hillary, which
Right.
I think is their best option.
Gosh, I mean, can you imagine Hillary and Donald squaring off again?
Yep. Oh, I could.
You could, huh?
Very easily.
I mean, is she in any kind of health? I mean, she's coughing all the time.
Yeah, but, you know, they got over that in the last election, too. She was faced with that, and, you know, the press
Stumbling
cover,
around
the
and-
propaganda machine covers up for her. That's in place, you know. They're absolutely bloodthirsty to get rid of him. They know the impeachment trial won't get rid of him. You know, so what do? They go with their best weapon.
Uh-huh. Hillary Rodham Clinton.
And that side of the aisle, for some reason, they just can't
Can't shake her off.
They really can't. I don't think there's any way out of Clinton, to be honest with you, if Biden can't hang on.
Right.
And I've said this for months. So.
Mm-hmm. But if Hunter gets on the stand, they're trying to say he's an irrelevant witness.
Then
but-
all bets are off.
Right.
Yeah. Because then we're going to know more about why that, you know, that Ukrainian phone call was so important.
And why Ambassador Ivanovich was fired.
Have you ever seen so much interest in a Ukrainian phone call in your life? Join us again next week.